Emma Parker was 28 and working as an executive assistant in a busy marketing company in Chicago. She lived a simple life, long workdays, short sleep, and very few moments that felt like her own. She was known in the office as someone reliable, quiet, and always the last to leave, not because she had to, but because she believed that effort would one day turn into something better, something stable, something worth all the tired nights. Her world mostly revolved around schedules, emails, and meetings she was never invited to. She organized the life of people who lived bigger lives than hers, especially her boss Daniel Collins, the CEO of the company. Daniel was admired by everyone. He was calm, sharp, and always in control. People listened when he spoke, and even silence felt powerful when he entered a room. Emma respected him deeply, not just because he was her boss, but because he treated her work with attention, something she rarely experienced from others in higher positions. Still, Emma kept emotional distance. She had learned early that workplace admiration could become complicated, so she stayed focused. She never stayed in conversations longer than needed, and she always reminded herself that she was just doing her job, nothing more. One evening, the office slowly emptied as employees left for their homes. Emma stayed behind as usual, finishing reports that needed to be ready for the next morning. The building felt quiet, almost too quiet. Only the sound of her keyboard filled the space. Outside, rain started falling softly against the glass windows, adding a dull rhythm to the silence. She checked the time and realized it was already late. She rubbed her eyes, stretched slightly, and went back to work. That was when she heard footsteps approaching, steady and familiar. She looked up and saw Daniel Collins walking toward her desk. He was holding 2 coffee cups, his tie slightly loosened, as if he had also decided to stay longer than planned. He stopped in front of her desk and placed 1 cup beside her laptop without saying much at first. Then he simply said he thought she might need it. Emma blinked in surprise. She thanked him quickly, slightly confused but grateful. It was not common for him to personally bring anything, especially not coffee. Daniel did not leave right away. Instead, he leaned slightly against the edge of her desk, looking at her work screen, then at her face. He asked her why she always stayed so late. Emma hesitated for a moment before answering honestly. She said she just wanted to finish things properly, and also because it felt better to leave work done than to carry it home in her mind. Daniel gave a small smile, not mocking, but thoughtful. He told her most people would not care that much. Emma simply shrugged. She said maybe they should. Then she continued working, expecting him to leave, but he stayed. There was a short silence between them, not uncomfortable, but unusual. Then Daniel spoke again, asking if she ever got tired of this routine. Emma looked at him carefully before replying. She said she was used to it, and that life did not always give choices that felt exciting, only choices that felt necessary. Something in her words seemed to affect him, but he did not show it strongly. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if understanding something deeper than what she had said out loud. Then he changed the topic slightly and told her there was something happening the next day, a small private gathering at his penthouse, just a few people, no formal company event, more personal than professional. Emma paused, unsure if she had heard correctly. Daniel Collins was inviting her to a private party at his home, not as an employee in a meeting, but as a guest. She asked softly if he meant it, and he simply said yes, then added that he would like her to stay late after work the next day and join them. Emma felt her thoughts slow down for a moment. She was not used to this kind of invitation, especially from someone like him. Her first instinct was to assume it was work-related, maybe a networking situation, or something she misunderstood, but his tone did not sound formal, it sounded personal. She asked if others from the office would be there. Daniel replied that only a few close people would attend, people he trusted. That answer made her even more unsure, because she did not know where she fit in that category. He noticed her hesitation and told her she did not need to answer immediately, she could think about it. After that, he left her desk and walked back toward his office, leaving her alone with 2 things, her unfinished work and a cup of coffee that suddenly felt heavier than usual. Emma tried to focus again, but her mind kept drifting back to the invitation. She wondered why she was even considered. She was not part of his social circle, she was not involved in high-level meetings, and she rarely even spoke to him outside of work tasks. Still, something about the way he looked at her earlier stayed in her thoughts. The next morning, she acted normal at work, but inside she was still thinking about it. During lunch break, she called her best friend Olivia in another city. Olivia listened carefully as Emma explained everything, and immediately reacted with excitement. She joked that CEOs do not invite assistants to private penthouse parties unless there is interest involved. Emma did not like that idea. She said it felt unlikely. Olivia insisted she was overthinking. She told her to go, at least for experience. Emma ended the call still unsure, more confused than before, but now also slightly curious. That night, she stood in front of her mirror longer than usual, trying to decide if she should go. She thought about how small her life felt lately, how predictable everything had become, and how strange it was that one unexpected invitation had broken that routine in her mind. She did not sleep well. Her thoughts kept circling around the same question: why her, why now, and what exactly did Daniel Collins see when he looked at her? Something about it felt like the beginning of something she could not fully understand yet, and that uncertainty stayed with her until the next evening when she finally made her decision to go. Emma arrived at Daniel Collins' penthouse with a mix of nervousness and curiosity she could not fully control. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, and every second made her rethink her decision. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world that felt far removed from her daily life. Soft lights, quiet music, and people dressed in elegant clothes filled the space. Everything looked polished and carefully arranged, like nothing in that room was accidental. She stood near the entrance for a moment, unsure where to go, until Daniel noticed her and walked over. He looked different outside the office, more relaxed but still confident. He greeted her warmly and said he was glad she came. Emma forced a polite smile, still trying to understand why she was there. Before she could settle, Daniel turned slightly and introduced someone beside him, a woman standing close, with calm confidence and an elegant presence. Her name was Vanessa, and she greeted Emma politely, then said something that instantly changed the air around Emma. She said she was Daniel's fiancée. For a second Emma felt like the room had gone quieter even though people were still talking around her. She did not expect that word, it landed in her mind too fast, making it hard to react naturally. She forced herself to remain calm and offered a polite greeting, but inside she felt a strange mix of embarrassment and confusion. Daniel noticed her reaction, but before anything could be explained, he was pulled into another conversation across the room by guests who wanted his attention, leaving Emma standing near Vanessa, who did not seem uncomfortable at all. In fact, she appeared composed and kind, which made Emma even more unsure about what was going on. Emma slowly moved toward the balcony to get away from the crowd, telling herself she was overthinking everything. Outside, the city lights of Chicago spread out like a quiet ocean of movement. She tried to breathe normally and remind herself that she was just a guest at a social event, nothing more. A few minutes later, Vanessa joined her on the balcony, holding 2 glasses of wine. She offered one to Emma in a friendly way. Emma hesitated but accepted, still unsure of her place in this situation. Vanessa stood beside her and looked out at the city before speaking softly. She said Emma seemed different from the people inside, more real, more grounded. Emma was not sure how to respond, so she simply thanked her. Vanessa then mentioned Daniel again, saying he talked about work often, but rarely about anything personal, and that he had been under a lot of pressure lately. Emma listened carefully, trying to understand the tone behind Vanessa's words. It did not feel hostile, but it also did not feel completely casual. There was something careful in how she spoke, like she was choosing every word. Then Vanessa said something that made Emma pause. She said Daniel's engagement had already ended emotionally, even if not publicly, and that they were still maintaining appearances because of business expectations. She explained that Daniel's company image was tied to stability, and sudden changes could affect investors and trust. Emma felt a strange discomfort hearing that. Because it made the situation more complicated than she expected, she asked why she was told about it, and Vanessa replied quietly that Daniel often confused emotional needs with professional choices, and sometimes did things without thinking about consequences. Emma did not know what to say to that. She looked back toward the living room where Daniel was speaking with guests, and suddenly everything felt less clear than before. She wondered if she had misunderstood his invitation completely. Before she could process it further, Vanessa added that Daniel had mentioned Emma several times recently, not in a formal way, but in a way that made Vanessa curious. She said it seemed like Emma had become someone he trusted more than expected, which created tension in his personal life. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. She did not know how to react to that information. It was unexpected and uncomfortable at the same time. She started questioning whether her presence there was really casual or if it had deeper meaning she was not aware of. The evening continued, and Emma tried to stay composed. She moved through polite conversations, small greetings, and quiet observations, but she always felt slightly disconnected, like she was observing a life she did not belong to. Later in the night, the crowd became smaller as some guests left, music softened, and the atmosphere turned quieter. Emma found herself near a hallway close to Daniel's office, trying to decide if it was time to leave. That was when Daniel appeared again, this time without the crowd around him. He looked more serious, and for the first time that night, he seemed less in control. He asked her if she was okay, and Emma replied calmly that she was fine but confused. Daniel paused before speaking, then told her he knew the situation felt unclear, and that he should have explained things better. He said the invitation was not part of any professional expectation, it was personal, and that he wanted her there because she felt different from the people he usually dealt with. Emma listened but did not interrupt. She could sense that he was trying to be honest, but the situation was still complicated. She told him she did not understand what he meant by that, and Daniel hesitated before answering. He said that recently he had been feeling disconnected from his own life, that most of his relationships felt controlled or performative, and that Emma was one of the few people who spoke to him without trying to impress or influence him. Emma felt a shift in her emotions, because despite everything, his words sounded sincere, but before she could respond properly, a voice from inside the office interrupted them, one of Daniel's business partners making a comment about how convincing the setup had been. Emma turned slightly and heard enough to understand that her presence had been part of something staged or at least discussed among others in a way that made her feel exposed. Her expression changed immediately, and Daniel noticed it. He stepped forward to explain, but Emma raised her hand slightly, asking for clarity instead of comfort. She wanted truth, not reassurance. At that moment, Vanessa appeared again at the end of the hallway, her expression softer now, and she admitted quietly that things had been mixed with business expectations and personal emotions, and that Daniel often struggled to separate both worlds. Emma stood still, processing everything she had learned in a single night. Her trust in the situation had been shaken. Even though no direct harm had been done, she felt emotionally unsettled and uncertain about what was real and what was not. Daniel looked at her with visible conflict, like he wanted to fix what had already been said but did not know how, and Emma realized that whatever was happening between them was far more complicated than a simple invitation or misunderstanding. She slowly stepped back, needing space to think, and as she stood there between confusion, attraction, and disappointment, she understood that the night had changed something important, even if she did not yet know what the final outcome would be. Emma stood in the quiet hallway of Daniel Collins' penthouse, her mind still trying to process everything she had heard that night. The soft music from the party faded behind her, but the words she overheard kept repeating in her head, especially the ones that suggested her presence had been discussed like part of a plan rather than a simple invitation. She felt a tight pressure in her chest, not from anger alone, but from confusion and disappointment mixing together. She had not expected anything perfect from the evening, but she also had not expected to feel like she was standing in the middle of something unclear and emotionally complicated. Daniel stepped closer to her, his voice lower now, less confident than before. He said her name carefully, like he was afraid she would leave before he could explain anything. Emma looked at him but did not respond immediately. She wanted honesty, not explanations shaped to reduce damage. He admitted that the evening had started with poor intentions, not harmful ones, but still unclear ones. He said there had been pressure from people around him to appear stable and in control, especially because of business expectations, and that somewhere along the way, he made choices without thinking about how they would affect her. Emma listened quietly, her expression steady but distant. She asked him directly what part of the night was real, and what part was just image or convenience. Her voice was calm, but there was pain underneath it that she could not fully hide. Before Daniel could answer fully, Vanessa appeared again at the end of the hallway, her steps slow, her expression more serious than before. She looked at both of them and admitted that things in Daniel's life were often mixed between personal emotion and public expectation, and that it created confusion for everyone around him. She said she had known Daniel for a long time, and that even though their engagement had lost emotional meaning, their lives were still connected through work and reputation. She did not say it with anger, but with tired honesty, like someone who had accepted a difficult reality. Emma felt even more unsure after hearing that, because it meant the situation was not simple betrayal or simple misunderstanding. It was something layered, involving choices, pressure, and emotional confusion that none of them had fully controlled. Daniel took a step closer again, this time speaking more slowly. He said Emma was not part of a plan in the way she feared, but she was also not just a casual guest. He admitted that he had invited her because being around her felt different, calmer, more real, and that he had not fully understood his own feelings before acting on them. Emma looked away for a moment, trying to steady herself, because part of her wanted to believe him, but another part of her felt like trust was already damaged by how everything had unfolded. She told him that intention did not erase impact, and that even honest confusion could still hurt someone. For a moment, no one spoke. The hallway felt still, almost too quiet compared to the rest of the night. Then Daniel said something softer. He told her that he did not expect forgiveness, he only wanted her to understand that his feelings had not been fake, even if his actions were unclear. Emma felt her emotions pull in two directions. She could see sincerity in his face, but she also remembered how easily situations like this could become painful when boundaries were not clear. She took a slow breath and told him she needed space to think, not answers in that moment. Daniel did not stop her, he simply nodded, accepting her words even though it was clear he did not want her to leave like that. Emma walked toward the elevator, her steps steady but heavy. Each step felt like she was moving away from something unfinished, something that could have gone differently under better circumstances. As she waited for the elevator doors to open, she thought about everything that had happened since the invitation, the coffee at her desk, the unexpected smile, the penthouse lights, Vanessa's words, and Daniel's confession that came too late to fix the confusion completely. When the elevator finally arrived, she stepped inside alone, and as the doors began to close, Daniel called out her name one last time, his voice carrying a mix of urgency and regret. He said he was sorry for how everything unfolded, and that he never intended to make her feel used or misled. Emma looked at him for a brief moment, her expression unreadable, then the doors slowly closed between them, cutting off the sound of the party, the conversations, and his voice. The ride down felt long and silent. Emma stood still, staring at the floor numbers changing, trying to understand what she truly felt. It was not just anger or sadness, it was something more complicated, a mix of disappointment, emotional exhaustion, and a strange sense of loss for something that had not fully formed. When she stepped out of the building, the cool night air hit her face, reminding her that the world outside still continued normally. Cars passed, lights glowed, and people moved forward with their lives, unaffected by the emotional storm she had just walked through. She sat in a quiet taxi ride home, looking out the window without really seeing anything. Her mind kept replaying Daniel's voice, not the confusing parts, but the honest ones, and that made everything harder to separate. Over the next few days, Emma tried to return to her normal routine. She went back to work, handled tasks, and kept conversations polite, but something inside her had shifted. She no longer saw the office the same way, or Daniel's name in emails the same way. Eventually, she submitted her resignation, not in anger, but in quiet decision. She knew staying would keep reopening questions she was not ready to live inside every day. Her life needed distance, not constant emotional uncertainty. Daniel tried to reach out once through a message, short and careful, saying he understood her choice and wished her well. Emma read it but did not reply, not because she hated him, but because she needed closure that did not depend on ongoing communication. Months passed, and Emma slowly rebuilt her life in a different city. She focused on herself again, new routines, new work, and new people who did not carry emotional history she had to untangle. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she still thought about that night, not with bitterness alone, but with mixed understanding, because she realized that not every painful situation comes from pure intention or pure betrayal. Sometimes it comes from people who do not fully understand the consequences of their own emotions until it is too late. And even though she moved forward, a small part of her always remembered the man who stood in that hallway, not as a perfect story, but as a reminder that clarity and honesty matter more than attraction or timing, especially when hearts are involved.